Welcome to the Imperfectly Empowered podcast with leading DIY lifestyle blogger Anna Fulmer, where women are inspired with authentic stories and practical strategies to reclaim their hearts and homes by empowering transformation, one imperfect day at a time.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Imperfectly Empowered podcast. I am your host, Anna Fulmer. Today on the podcast, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Bree Gordon. Bree is an experienced speaker on trauma and connection, specifically healing post-trauma and using music therapy for healing purposes. She has been featured in NPR, BroadwayWorld, and VeryWell. And with a board certification in music therapy and 12 years experience working in medical and community settings, she is highly respected for her clinical work as well as her success in creating jobs in the field of creative art therapies. She has served as the co-owner and director of Creative Arts Therapies of the Palm Beach area since 2012. She has staffed and developed music and art therapy programs for over 100 organizations throughout Southern Florida. Welcome, Bree Gordon.
I'm not Megan Miller. Let me change my name.
No worries.
Hi, I'm Bree.
Hi, Bree.
We have, so my 9 to 5 is I own and operate a creative arts therapy practice, and we have a lot of oncology programs, which we can't go in person right now because of Omicron. Right. So my staff has been using my Zoom to do virtual, and every time they go on, they need to change the name. So
I really don't care. It won't show up or anything, and everything will log as Bree. So no worries.
I just wait a second. Am I on my
That's Zoom hilarious. I love that. Awesome. Welcome. Oh, there it says Bree.
I fixed it.
We're chatting here, the challenges of Zoom. I had somebody come on one time and they literally had no idea that the entire time on my end, all I was seeing was a different person in a different image. And we still have no idea how it happened. It was super creepy. It was some random person.
That's
showing
so
up.
Bizarre.
Yeah, even though their video, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So who knows what's happening in the world of Zoom.
Every day a new adventure.
That's exactly right. So I am so excited to learn from you and hear more about the concept of music and art as therapy. We are huge fans of the performing arts in general in our house, big music fans. And I'm curious, was there something initially in your earlier years that led you to where you are today? What prompted you to enter the world of music, let alone using it for therapy?
I mean, honestly, the older I get, the more I can point to just about everything, as leading to this point, which is really, really kind of cool to sit back and observe. But yeah, so going back to the beginning, I'm an only child, and I grew up mostly with just my mom as a single parent. My mom was a CNA in a nursing home. Mm-hmm. And so, when we didn't have babysitting or childcare, I just went to work with mom, if we had the day off of school or whatever. And so she will share with me that even as young as 3, even before memories that I really have, of me kind of holding court in the forum of the nursing home and, singing and dancing for all the residents. And I loved it. I always felt really comfortable with that. As we got a little bit older, my mom transitioned to doing case care management in the home. I started working for her even at age 14, helping out with meals and companionship, things like that. We had moved with my grandma at that point as well. So I think that throughout my childhood, I just had a lot of unique opportunities to become really comfortable connecting to people outside of my experience, connecting to people in different generations, with different backgrounds, religions, cultures, things like that. And so I knew that I wanted to be in that space somehow. I knew I wanted to be helping others, people that were different than me. I felt like I did recognize I had a gift in that area. I knew I wanted to be involved in music. That was, to me, the one thread throughout my life through, living through as a child of divorce. And I ended up losing my dad when I was very young, and all the kind of challenges that went along with that through my life. Music was always the constant. Music was always the thread that gave me a community, that gave me a form of expression, where I felt one, most like myself, but also permission to kind of step into another role, right? Step into another place for a while, escape for a while. So it's kind of that dual relationship of feeling so authentic, but also allowing myself to become something and someone else also.
Yeah.
So I knew that I wanted to combine music in whatever I was doing to help others because it helped me so much. I started to apply to schools for dual majors between psychology and vocal performance. I don't know what I was going to do with that because
right.
psychologist is not a thing. Maybe it should be. Maybe that would be but it's not yet. So in just doing kind of a Google search for that, I realized that music therapy was a thing. Please pardon the sweet singing sounds of my 9-month-old in the background. Her babysitter.
That's so sweet. I can think of many worse things to hear across the Zoom feed. So
I'm sure, and through the last 2 years, I'm sure we've heard them all, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But once I realized that music therapy was actually a path that I could pursue, it just seemed like the absolute perfect fit. And then getting into school, we started to break into our practicums and our internship opportunities. I realized I was the only one in my class that felt comfortable working with seniors. Everybody worked with kids, and that was not something I felt called to do. So that has really marked a lot of my career. It's not been my entire career working with seniors, but most of the way through, my specialty has been working with adults with neurodegenerative disorders. So those that are living with Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, stroke survivors. And really through that has transitioned to specializing with working with trauma survivors. I have the opportunity to work with a lot of Holocaust survivors, World War II vets, and just a lot of individuals, whether they have something they can kind of point to in their life or not, that have lived through one traumatic experience or another. Our seniors who have been, thriving through the last 80, 90, 100 years. I mean, think of the changes, think of the experiences that they've lived through. So music can really help not only help them express themselves, help them communicate, socialize, but get back in touch with pieces of themselves that they really love, that they really miss. And for a lot of them, especially our Holocaust survivors, get in touch with an inner child that really never got experience. So it was a long answer, I know, but
no, I love it. Oh my gosh, there's so much to unpack in all of that. But so what instruments did you start out? Did you start out playing instruments, or was it primarily vocal performance, or where did you start?
Yeah, I started like everybody on the piano. I quickly learned, or probably even more quickly than me, my mom probably quickly learned, again, mentioned single parent, work tough hours. It's not exactly easy to pay for private piano lessons. So you want to make sure your kid's good, right? I was not. I was terrible.
Same girl, same.
I was very easily distracted. I was more interested in kind of socializing with the teacher at 5 than actually playing anything on the piano. It was observed of what an improviser I was, which, has really actually served me really well in my career to be able to adapt in the moment musically. But it actually happened to be that the first recital after my dad had passed, I was 7 years old. And my teacher, I don't remember if someone asked me if I wanted to do something for him, but somehow it came out that I had wanted to sing. I wanted to sing the Bette Midler song From a Distance, because I became obsessed with this idea of heaven, at the cusp of magical thinking. And, study child psychology, 7 is right in that zone of like, I understand what's going on, but I also really have a little bit of hope that there's unicorns and all these happening. So the song From a Distance for me was like this beautiful idea as a kid that I hadn't said goodbye, that you're just kind of you're still there. You're still watching me from a distance. So I remember singing that, one of my first like really strong memories. I remember who was in the room, who was sitting where. And I don't think I ever took another piano lesson from that teacher after that, because she was like, we're going to switch to voice. And for me, that has just changed my whole life. I went on to pick up a couple of different instruments, through the years. In music therapy education, your college program, You do have to be proficient in piano. That came back to haunt me.
Yep.
Guitar, voice, and percussion. We do a lot of
interesting
group rhythm activities. So piano, I came back to have a new relationship with it as an adult career, but voice has always been my primary.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting with the piano. My daughter is 9 and she started piano at, I think it was 6, she started. And I've always told her, because I wish somebody had helped me understand this when I was younger, that piano is really music education. You don't play piano more often than not to be a pianist. You play as a foundation for anything else musical that you want to do, whether it be singing or, I even tell her she really wants to be on stage. She loves the stage. She's in a performing arts academy now. She just loves it. And so I'm trying to find that balance between you don't have to be a pianist. We only take lessons every other week, trying to keep it, sort of just fun and laid back, because it's exactly like what you're saying. So I think a takeaway here for anybody listening who has a child who's interested in music or a grandchild or whatever, piano is really music education. If you want to do anything with music, have that foundation there, but it really kind of sets you up for what you're saying, all of the possibilities with music. Yeah.
Even when teaching, I do some lessons for voice and guitar, and even teaching guitar, I start at the keyboard.
Yes.
Because we think about the structure of the guitar, right? If you explain it as a keyboard, and then you kind of start to figure out those keys, and like you're saying, that foundation work for music education on the keyboard, it's a lot easier to translate that to the guitar. So yeah, that's a great tip for sure.
Yeah, I love that. So currently do you primarily sing for music therapy? Is that sort of your primary instrument, if you will, is voice?
Voice and guitar is definitely the easiest to bring into rooms. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, working chairside in oncology while patients are receiving their infusion treatment. It's really hard to wheel a keyboard into that situation, right? So a guitar is really easy to just kind of come in. It's a really friendly thing. Typically you kind of see a guitar, it's something really adaptable. It's really almost like, even if you don't understand music therapy, you kind of understand the idea of you're going to sit down, play a guitar. Right. I can make that request. Right. I almost feel like if you sit down at a piano, it's they're going to choose what's coming next.
Yep.
But if someone walks in, it's such a friendly kind of vibe. Be like, what are you in the mood for today? What kind of music do you like? And so I think that's almost reduces some intimidation around.
I can definitely see that.
Present.
Yeah.
So that's probably our primary. We do use the piano keyboard sometimes. I use a lot of drumming in groups, especially if it's a new group I'm going to meet, going into a addiction treatment center, and it's a really transient setting where a lot of people are coming in and out. One of the core goals of that group would be group cohesion, right? We recover as a group, we learn as a group, we heal as a group. So rhythm is just an excellent way to introduce that into the room. I tell them these drums literally exist to amplify your voice, to make your rhythm louder in the room. You can't do it wrong. It's all about what's inside you coming out, right? So about honoring that individual voice, but also helping it be a part of the group conversation. So we do a lot of different exercises for layering rhythms into each other, for kind of questioning and answering through rhythm and music. So those are kind of the two biggest things that we use. A lot of times clients will have music, whether it's, in addiction treatment and they really like rap and hip hop. You don't want to hear me do that. Not very therapeutic.
Me neither.
Or with my seniors, and they really love the sounds of big band. I can't replicate, a 30-piece Glenn Miller orchestra experience myself and a guitar. So we do some recorded music, but a majority of the music that we use is live, not only provided by the music therapist, but inclusive of the clients themselves. So we do a lot of songwriting as well, music analysis, things like that.
How do you use your own experiences walking through loss and trauma? How do you tap into that when you now work on the other side of it in terms of healing? Do you find yourself ever suddenly experiencing a very poignant emotion where you think wow, where did that come from? But somebody's experience or whatever, do you experience that where you tap into that and it feels raw and fresh again? Or is it just kind of forcing yourself to bring those emotions back to kind of help relate to where somebody is at? How do you navigate that?
It's a really great question. So I also work with survivors of gun violence, and one of the communities that I work with is the students of Stoneman Douglas in Parkland, Florida. And we had for several years done summer camps pre-COVID times, and actually we did an adapted one this last summer as well, where it was all trauma informed. We had a team of creative arts therapists, music therapy, myself, a drama therapist, art therapist. And our second year through the camp, we just had some interesting things kind of come up. The first year we did the camp was June. The shooting happened in February. Camp started in June. There was nothing PTSD about this. This was active trauma.
Right.
This was just a few months after everything. I mean, school, had come back for the rest of the semester, but nothing was ever the same. They didn't know what the next year was going to look like. I remember the kids coming in saying, I saw in the news today I might have to wear a clear plastic backpack or walk through sticks walking. I don't even know. No one's telling me this. I'm seeing it on national news, what I'm going to have to walk into school. Right. So nothing was solidified for them. Right. Nothing, their trust in adults was affected. Their trust in everything was affected. So the first year was about figuring that out. The second year, was really kind of settling into, this is part of my life now. And I've now gone through a whole school year after the fact and kind of figuring out, and some of the kids were now starting to transition. Some of the freshmen, we was in a freshman building, were starting to go into their senior year. Kids that were older were transitioning out of high school, out of that community. And for whatever reason, there was just a lot of reasons that year was really special for the camp. However, I realized I was holding a lot of it. So at the end of the camp ended on a Friday. That next few days, I was really feeling it in my body. Yeah. And I ended up actually having to walk with like a cane. I was really having a lot of pain. I ended up going to the doctor, and the doctor was like, did you get in a car accident? Like, you have 3 herniated discs in your back. Like, what happened to you? Yeah. I'm like, you know what? I led a trauma camp and I never went to therapy. I held all of this for 6 weeks for 40 kids, and I never once talked about it with someone else. Yeah. I had no place to put that. And I truly, truly believe that is exactly what manifested my physical pain. And it's not the first time in my life I've felt that. I've felt the effects of like what can happen to you when you're not taking care of yourself. But all these things exist in you. And like you just said, to your point, you're doing work where this stuff is coming up. Right. And so many times I'm really tempted to say, I've dealt with that. I've gone to therapy. I've processed through that. I did the retreats. I did all that. I'm good. Right. Yeah. And then what happens when we're not keeping track of that maintenance for ourselves while holding so much of that for others? My trauma is not gun violence. My trauma is not that specific, but there's so much in what we see in others that can bring up things surprising within yourself, although it may seem unrelated, although you may have addressed it in the past. If you think that's a one and done and do not continue to maintain that in yourself, your body will let you know. And that's what happens.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've experienced 2 sides of the coin when it comes to whether it be trauma or loss. I worked in the emergency department for 10 years. I'm a nurse practitioner by education, and several of the ERs that I've worked in were trauma ERs. And so as a professional, similar to what you're saying, I have seen that where I'm standing on the professional side of trauma, where I'm watching families come in. Maybe I'm the one telling them, this is what's happened, and giving the bad news. So there's that side of like what you're saying is like the professional side of trauma, where I'm walking people through, but I'm still dealing with a lot of the traumatic emotions myself, because maybe it's a patient who's similar in age to a loved one, or maybe it's a child. I mean, there's so many things. So on one side, I would argue, I think there's so many professionals out there who, to your point, are experiencing traumatic events daily in their jobs and walking people through trauma, and they never get the outlet to release that. And that is really hard. And I think emergency medicine is probably one of the most evident areas where we need work in that, because I think we don't even recognize the toll it takes on our bodies, like what you're saying. We're absorbing everyone else's grief and trying to push it down ourselves. And then on the flip side, I lost my best friend to breast cancer of 20 years. And she was like a sister to me. We were roommates all the 4 years of college. And for me, what was really challenging and yet a blessing at the same time is I helped take care of her in her last 3 weeks. So there was the like personal grief. There was also the grief as a, nurse practitioner with all these years of education. I couldn't do anything to help her. It's that concept of tapping into different emotions of trauma and recognizing maybe some of the healing that needs to happen in different ways of releasing that. So I'm resonating with what you're saying on both levels, the professional and the personal. And what would you say to somebody, maybe it's an ER nurse who is dealing with trauma all of the time and has no way to release it? What would you say to that person who thinks like they don't have a personal traumatic event, but they're dealing with trauma all of the time? What are some words that you might have for that person?
Okay, so first of all, anyone who is listening to this and thinks this doesn't apply to me,
I
have no trauma, in the trauma-informed community called big T, little T, whatever that means to you. The last 2 years,
right,
of everyone's life, we have been experiencing collective global trauma. Now you ask me what I say to an ER nurse.
Right. Yes. Especially for the last 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Seriously. I mean, I have some good friends that are ER nurses, and I mean, it is the feeling like they need to constantly have on this brave, strong face, even off the clock, because even off the clock, your friends are texting you, right? Like we went through a really big scare with my husband the week actually that I delivered my daughter.
Oh gosh.
Hospitalized with COVID and actually did need to receive like life saving measures. And I'm texting her, right? Now you're saying this to me and I'm thinking, wow, for her getting off a shift after 12 hours of working with COVID patients all day. And now, her closest, couple friends are texting saying, hey, O2 sats at 87. What do I do? Call the ambulance. Here we go. It's never ending for these individuals. So they are constantly been living over the last 2 years in this almost survival state. I don't mean to speak for everyone, but this is just kind of the observations that I'm seeing or that I can imagine. That's not healthy for our bodies, for our minds. It's certainly very honorable what these individuals have been doing. Nurses, doctors, CNAs, the housekeeping, everybody involved.
Yeah, absolutely.
These hospitals running always, but especially these last 2 years, and honestly, especially even right now, where we are again hitting new levels of max capacity. You have to check in with yourself. And I know that sounds like everybody says that, right? And self-care culture is big right now.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of the bubble bath and the pedicure and the glass of wine. I get it, but that we really need to think about what that means beyond. And I go back to what I said earlier about listening to your body. That headache is not just a headache. That backache is not just a backache. That fatigue is not just fatigue. Your body is telling you need something more. And that doesn't necessarily mean you need to, leave your job or go on a big vacation or whatever. This is not the time maybe for some of those decisions to make, right? So how can we find that balance where every day, 5 to 10 minutes a day, you are finding that time, that space for just you, that's not giving yourself to someone else, that's not constantly living in that, that survival state, that tension. I just think about that physical tension that someone's experiencing when they're constantly waiting for the next ball to drop, for that next variant, for that next spike, for that next goodbye on an iPhone. We lost my father-in-law. He didn't have COVID, but he was in a COVID unit when he passed, and everybody's zooming in, or FaceTime. It's just the way that things have been. And that I know is difficult. Thank God we had nurses and nurse practitioners and doctors that called my mother-in-law from their personal cell phone, you know, to allow for those communications to happen. God bless them for that, right?
Yeah.
That is another thing that is expected of those professionals. So I talk a lot about what a respite, a 5-minute song can be. You know, honestly, just selecting intentionally, not just turning on the radio and just to have noise in the background. An intentional gift you can give yourself that when I feel this way, this is a song I can listen to. And I'm going to spend 5 minutes of my time just sitting with this song, listening to the messages it's sharing with me. Why did I choose this song for myself in this moment? What is a song I need for grounding? What is a song I need for connection? What is a song I need for stress relief? What's a song I need for motivation and energy? And just really having those on like a Spotify or whatever for yourself that you can just give yourself that intentional time. Writing, journaling, if you're a journaler, is always a great way just to kind of free write, to write poetry, to write song lyrics, whatever that looks like. It doesn't have to be shared with anyone. It's not for anyone else. It's for you. So just building in small 5 to 10 minute practices in every day to just give yourself that grounding, that break, that reconnection to yourself, because you are in the position you're in to give to others because of who you are. But it's so easy to lose connection with that when you're just constantly attending to everyone else's needs.
I love that. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, stay tuned. We're going to do a speed round of this or that with Bree, have a little fun, and we're going to hear more of her expert advice on healing and trauma, and so much to dive into. I can't wait right after this break.
You have tried it all. Worried you will never lose the extra weight or reclaim the energy you once enjoyed? Want to achieve fat loss without spending hours in a gym or eliminating entire food groups from your diet? Well, now you can. In the virtual Faster Way to Fat Loss with Anna, my 6-week fitness and nutrition program, you will learn how to pair effective 30-minute workouts with all-natural, evidence-based nutritional strategies to leverage what you eat and when you eat to reset your metabolism and burn fat fast, even that stubborn belly fat. I am a dual certified nurse practitioner passionate about teaching sustainable strategies to promote fat loss and prevent disease. I have cheered on thousands of clients who have done just that with the Faster Way program. In my 6-week program, the average client currently sheds 7 inches of body fat. 93% report more energy and 89% state that their mental health has improved. 100% of clients report they feel this program is sustainable. Curious to try the program but not sure if the strategies will work for you? Try the Faster Way strategies for free. Head to www.hammersandhugs.com and sign up for my free 7-day fat loss accelerator course today and start your own transformation story.
We are back with Bree. We're going to do a quick speed round of this or that. Bree, it's basically 2 options. You pick one or the other. Not overly stressful or traumatizing.
Right. Okay. All right.
Okay. Coffee. Do you prefer hot or iced?
Oh, this is already hard. It's like
she's traumatized already. We need music.
I know. Okay, so if we're gonna go from let's go from a coping place. Like I love what we're talking about. What can we do for ourselves, self-care?
Yeah.
Right? Then iced coffee is I'm looking for it. I get out my car, go to Dunkin', get that iced coffee.
It's so exciting, isn't it? It's what gets me up in the morning. Sad to say. I mean, coffee and Jesus, not in that order. But what's your favorite iced coffee drink?
That would be a Dunkin' Donuts.
Okay.
Cream, no sugar.
All right. There you go. She's got her order ready. Candy or baked goods?
Well, I have celiac, so candy.
Okay. What's your favorite candy?
Goods, but it's harder to find.
Yeah, it would be.
Reese's peanut butter cups.
It's a great choice. Music or podcasts?
Oh my God. Well, I do both. But for myself personally, music.
Yeah. Okay. What's your favorite? What's your go-to if you had to be on an island for the rest of your life and you could only bring one band or anything, vocalist, whatever along? What are you taking?
Beatles.
Oh, okay. I was not expecting that.
Ah.
Okay. Would you rather listen to well played? We're assuming these instruments are well played. Violin or saxophone?
Oh, 2 completely different
Yeah.
things. Gosh, that's tough, but my gut said violin, but I also love jazz sax.
Yeah. What's your favorite instrument to listen to? Let's just throw that out there.
Probably acoustic guitar.
Okay. Oh, interesting. Mine is the cello. Ugh.
Yeah,
I love it. My poor 9-year-old, she already like struggles to want to do everything. And I'm like, hey, the cello.
Yeah. But also, could you?
Exactly. Like she has the time to do that many things.
That's an expensive instrument, Ma.
It is. It really is. Oh, it's so beautiful. Okay. What's worse, laundry or dishes?
Oh Lord. I can't wait for my husband to listen to this. Both, I lack in both areas, but
all of the above. I'm with you.
Laundry's my vice. Yeah.
Yeah. Which one? Laundry?
Yeah. And it's not the washing it, but the folding and putting away.
And putting away. Yeah.
Mount laundry for is in my room. Yes.
Yeah. I need laundry elves. Okay. Flats or heels?
Oh, I'm 5'10", flats.
But you're 5'10"? Oh, girl. You're so beautiful. I'm 5'3". I like sat up taller as I said that. I'm like, I'm 5'3".
So I've been doing a lot of sessions through Zoom in the beginning of this. Yeah. Now, first, my patients are like, what? I had no idea.
I had no idea. Oh, I would love that. I actually played volleyball in high school and I was a setter and I was like, oh, this is pathetic.
Everyone thinks I should play volleyball. I'm terrible.
Touch at the top of the net. Oh my goodness. You say one of the quotes that you have said is that everyone goes through trauma, but not everyone grows through trauma. And I love this phrase. And again, as somebody who can speak to it kind of on the personal and the professional side, you sort of touched on this already. One of the things that you mentioned when we were speaking earlier is that it's easy to lose who you are when you're constantly on survival mode, taking care of somebody or taking care of other people. And I think this can even happen in relationships. There could almost be like emotional trauma, whether you're working through neglect or emotional abuse. Like it doesn't even have to be physical manifestations, but I think you can still then be constantly, in the survival mode, taking care of other people, whether it be your kids or parents, whatever the case may be. And I love that you mentioned you tapped into the idea of you need to sort of ground yourself again in things that helped make you who you are, the things that brought you joy and happiness, and sort of bring that reminder of what fills you with life. And you were specifically tapping into music. And I love that idea. So for those of you listening and watching, the takeaway there is find a song that inspires you, find a song that calms you, find a song that pumps you up. Like, I love the idea of kind of assigning music to these different emotions and what you're lacking and what you need. So that's takeaway number one. I love that Bree said. How else in your experience can people practically help heal on kind of an outpatient basis in their own lives from some of this sense of like survival mode? What are other ways? Obviously, we know fitness, nutrition, like whatever, the boring stuff that we all know, but like practical ways, maybe more specifically, that you have seen people respond well to when they do these things in their lives.
Go to therapy.
There you go. Go to therapy. I don't disagree with that. Yeah. Yeah. Tell me more about that.
So simplistic about it, but all the things you mentioned, I really have a story for everything that nutrition and fitness and all these things that I know when I'm neglecting this. I know right now in my life when I'm neglecting it. But I mean, I can just point to so many things about, first of all, having celiac. My whole life changed when I changed my diet. Yeah. And I think a lot of people living out there that just don't change their diet. Cause I mean, I didn't until I was 25, and I've lived with these struggles in my body since I was born. I mean, certainly there was certain ages as a kid, I didn't understand, but when I made that commitment to change my diet 100% forever, that's when, my joints, with the exception of the story I told earlier, my joints started to get better. My migraines went from once a month to once a year. I put on healthy weight, my skin cleared up, my anxiety went down, all of these things because I had made a choice, which wasn't easy, right? it's not easy it's getting easier now.
Yeah.
But even 10 years ago, to go to a house and all they have is, pizza, or to go to the holiday party and all there is donuts, whatever. Like, I get it. I know it's not comfortable, especially when you're really thin and you're thin for reasons of why you have celiac. And people you just don't eat. So then there's that kind of almost fear of like, well, should I eat? Because now they think there's something wrong with me that I'm not eating. So everything is about a really intentional choice and feeling comfortable and confident in that choice, right? For working out, I'm not a huge worker outer. I'm kind of like one of those people that gets into spurts for it. But I did get into this virtual bar program during COVID. It was the longest I'd ever committed to something.
Bar is no joke.
It's no joke. I felt
bar is no joke.
It was awesome. And I did it every day.
So sore after doing bar. Yeah.
It was incredible. And you know what happened? The week after I finished 8 weeks of bar every day, I got pregnant. And I was like, I don't, maybe this is because I'm so confident. Maybe this is because of my health and everything. And I'm like, what all the stars.
Had you been struggling to get pregnant before that?
Not necessarily, but I wasn't not trying either.
Yeah.
It was kind of one of those things that, I don't really have a big infertility story to share, which I know so many do struggle with that. So that wasn't my story necessarily, but I wasn't really trying or not trying either way. It's kind of like I put it up to the universe. If it happens, it happens. And my God, am I glad it happened, right? It's the biggest thing in my entire life. And so at timing, who the heck would get pregnant in 3 months into a pandemic? Who would do that when your husband are business owners and you don't know the future of the economy? But it happened, and it ended up being the absolute perfect time for us and our family. And I really do think a lot of things have aligned through decisions that I made, because not all. What other thing I did during that time, during that month when I finished that program, I went back to therapy. And I just wanted to know everything that I could know about myself, about my generational trauma, about, especially when I found I was pregnant, neuropsychology of, the child's brain and child parent bonding. And I wanted to make every choice that I could possibly make for myself and for my daughter before she was even here. Set her up for success. So when I talked earlier about that pain I was feeling in my back, like that should be the last case scenario, right? Because before that, if I'm honest with myself, my anxiety was going up. I was having nightmares about some of the things I was hearing at the camp. Things like this were happening. Stuff was showing up for me when I'm, watching a TV show or a movie and I'm having flashbacks of memories, whatever. But I ignored all that stuff because I could. And because we do, like as a society, we do. We push off. I have insomnia. I don't sleep well. I have anxiety. It's just the way I'm wired. All these things, we just excuse them away until we can't anymore. And when we can't anymore is oftentimes when we feel that in our body. So checking in with yourself mentally and emotionally really needs to be where we start, not what we push off.
Yeah. Well, and I love, it's funny that I said fitness nutrition, we all know that, which is hilarious because I'm a fitness nutrition coach. But, what I appreciated that you said is the problem is that we throw out these answers, for example, fitness and nutrition, and people are like, yep, I know that, but I don't know how to actually implement that into my life. So what I appreciate that you said is, I think what we so often struggle with is we know that we should or shouldn't do something, but we're not willing to follow through with the choice to make the change. And you said it's not easy. And I think right there is the kind of like area that we need to pause for a second, because I think so many times we put off something because we know it's going to be hard. But it's like, if we can get over that initial hurdle, it might actually save us from much greater pain and much greater challenge. If we're willing to do the hard things today, we might actually make it much easier for ourselves tomorrow and the next day.
Are like, it is a lot harder on the other end if you don't make these.
Yes. Yeah. And that, I think that's great that you're honing in on that, because I think that's something that needs to be kind of like press the pause button there. Is if it feels overwhelming, then it's probably the right thing to do right now. Like if you're like, I don't think I can do that, it may be the exact thing that you need to do.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like if what is this, so many idioms about this, right? If it doesn't feel challenging, then you're not going to grow or what.
Right.
I messed that up big time, but you know what I mean?
Listen, I get it. Just do the hard things, people.
Do the hard things, right? Oh God, I love Glennon Doyle. We can do hard things, right? But I also understand the feeling of being overwhelmed by opening the personal development book. And it's like the 10 habits you have to do every day to succeed.
Right.
Start by waking up at 5 a.m. Other than when my child was like, 2 weeks old and I needed to feed her every 45 minutes, I'm not waking up at 5 a.m. I'm just not going to do it. I just know that about myself, right? I accept that about myself. It's not as a human. They have the different prototypes. What animal are you? When are you most productive? It ain't me. Whatever animal I am.
It's not a morning animal.
It's not a morning animal, right? So then me opening that book, I'm like, well, guess I'm not going to be successful then.
Right.
I can't make these 10 things. I don't subscribe to that, right? I don't think that's the way that it has to be. I think there's not one formula for each person. I think everybody is their own unique formula.
Right.
Like I'm learning about being a parent right now.
Right.
I don't subscribe to all these things. I love structure, but this exact bedtime, this exact food at this exact time. Every child is unique and different, right? You have to trust that relationship that you know best what to do for your child. Right. Guess what? You have that same relationship with yourself. You have to trust yourself that you know what best to do for yourself. No one knows you like you do. So if making 10 commitments at the top of the year at 2022 to have a successful year is not for you, how about 3?
Right.
How about 3 conscious, intentional changes that you can make, that you can really stick to, that are going to make a huge difference, right? Let's just start with that.
Yeah. I think for people listening and watching, I think step 1 that I'm hearing from Bree is this idea of, are you experiencing any of the feelings that she mentioned? That are you in sort of a survival mode? Are you experiencing some of the traumatic feelings that you may have not even labeled traumatic, but, as you hear us talking, you're like, oh yeah, that's me. I feel that. So I think that's step 1 is recognizing it in yourself. And it doesn't just have to be like trauma in the sense of, ER trauma, but any of the traumatic experiences that we've talked about. So 1, recognize it. And then 2, remember the music advice. I think that's an important one. We know music is so powerful. And then 3, this concept of therapy. I think so many times there's either like a judgment that happens, whether we pass it on ourselves or other people, this idea that therapy somehow means we don't have it all together. Guess what? You don't. I don't. None of us do. I mean, I've had this conversation with multiple people. This idea, I definitely think I probably could have used it after my friend died. But the world shut down then with COVID. So, I mean, it was kind of like the timing was really bad there. But how would somebody go about finding music therapy? If somebody wants to, if somebody is resonating with what you're saying and your approach to therapy, how would somebody even find music therapy in their area?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our kind of national website is musictherapy.org. That's going to take you to the American Music Therapy Association.
Awesome. Just a side note from my producer, make sure we put that in the show notes. So you said musictherapy.org. We will make sure, you guys, that's in the show notes.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's going to connect you. So wherever you're listening from, it's just a starting point or resource. Let you know how you can get in touch with music therapists in your state. Whether you are in Florida, I'm in West Palm Beach, Florida, whether you are in Florida or not, and just want to reach out to me and I can connect you with a music therapist or with a program or just answer any questions, feel free to contact me. My company's website is catpb, catpb.com. And you can email me directly at Bree, BREE @catpb.com.
So we'll make sure all of that is in it for sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. I love that. So we will make sure that those connections, if you like the idea of music therapy and just using that type of, therapy specifically for you, then definitely make those connections and reach out. I love the idea of, honing in on music as therapy. I have to tell a story over the COVID crisis. I was in a patient room. So I left the bedside last December. But before that, I was, still there for all of the COVID stuff. But I was in a patient's room and I suddenly heard this music start to play. And it sounded very ethereal. And I was like, okay, is Jesus coming back or what is happening? I'm like looking around like, what?
At that point in the year, anything could happen.
Seriously, I'm like, amen, let's go. But I was so confused. I was like, what is that sound? So I'm trying to focus in on this patient conversation that I'm having. And I step out of the room and there's this woman playing a harp in the corner of our emergency department. And I could not believe it was so powerful how it just like the entire atmosphere changed. Like I remember sitting down at my desk being like, it made me sleepy. I remember saying out loud to the nurses, like, wow, this is actually making me really sleepy. But it was really a powerful statement. It makes me wonder, why don't we always have music playing in these like traumatic, high stress areas? We should just have music playing in the background.
Days that you had that during COVID, because a lot of services were removed during that time. I mean, still we're actually right
you know what? I say that it might have been right before, because that's a great point. It maybe wasn't over COVID. Well, I can't even remember what I had for breakfast this morning. So. No, that's a really good point. I don't know why I'm remembering over that time.
Last brain cell out. So listen, you're in good company. It's totally fine.
You're right, though. It probably wasn't over COVID. The point being, though, it was one of those things where it just struck me how powerful the music was.
Yeah.
And just how it calmed us.
Absolutely. And so, and that's amazing. We have a lot of people have shared their stories of having a harpist present on the unit, and like to kind of waft into the patient's room, but for the staff as well, right? Like for you guys. So we always try to remember that, when we're doing music therapy and we're working one-on-one in the rooms as therapists using music as the technique, we know that it's for staff as well. So we do a lot of procedural support. So if you know that a patient really struggles with that IV insertion or whatever is coming up, they have a lot of anxiety about, we will try to schedule to be present in that moment with them to be a positive redirection. And I just know that our nurses I worked 7 years in hospice care before I worked.
I was going to say, or oncology, that would be a great. Oh yeah.
And even recently in my nursing homes, they've started doing their COVID testing during the music therapy session.
Huh. Interesting.
While they're engaged in the music and singing and moving, they'll do their test. And there's a lot of, positive redirection that takes away from the anxiety. Not only is it uncomfortable, obviously everyone at this point knows it's uncomfortable, but if you don't understand it, first of all, you don't understand why you're wearing a mask.
Exactly.
There's a mask, what COVID is, and now something is going in your nose. There's a lot of fear and anxiety around that we're just expecting people to have the capacity to understand right now, and not everybody does. So anything that we can do to just refocus them, redirect them, it's time can be really valuable.
What last thought here, what would you say to parents with kids? We're talking about kind of the elderly population here, but interestingly, it's kind of similar then, of course, if we look at the other age spectrum with kids. How can parents implement music to help children, or just arts to help children or teens through these times as well? Because we know that anxiety is through the roof for children and teens as well as adults. And as parents, what can we be doing to use that with our children?
This is a really great question. And actually, you've got me kind of thinking about this differently than I ever have before in terms of parents. So I grew up, and doing the traditional music classes and wanting to be on stage, and a lot of the stuff like you shared about your daughter and the passion she had. And I'm so grateful for all of that. And I know that it has helped lead me to where I'm at today. But I think right now, if we as parents, and I even have to remind myself of this, right? Because I'm not in therapist mode when I'm home. I'm in mom mode now.
Right.
Think about the shift of music and art for expression versus performance. We quantify so much of what our kids do as good or bad, right? as good art or bad art, and not just like we're critiquing them and we're being, mean parents, but like our kids do it too. Like, I don't want to share this piece with you. It's not very good. Or I'm not ready to play this piece for you. It's not very good. So how can we as parents make that shift of using the arts in our home? And we have to do it for ourselves too, right? Because so many times we're afraid to bring it to the child because we're not going to be successful. I don't know how to, share this instrument with my child. I don't play it. I don't know how to teach my child how to use crayons. I can't draw. Well, what if the piano and, your Spotify account and your arts and crafts and whatever exists in your home that represents an artistic expression is just there to be heard, to be seen, and not to be good or bad. So I think that's a good place to start right now. There's a lot of places where kids are being evaluated, and being evaluated on a completely different criteria than ever before, because we've never had 2 years like we've had before, whether it's socially, academically, whatever it is, all the hurdles they've had to come over at this time. How can we use these things at home to not be another bar to reach necessarily, but just be together? And I think parents not only, empowering their children to use that as expression, but they're going to find a benefit from it as well.
Yeah, I love that. And I would also throw in the thought that I'm wondering too, if there would not be benefit as a parent to trying to be intentional about keeping that artistic expression off of technology. Because what I find is the danger is that everything is so technology based, but then that it's not isolated. It's like impossible to just simply draw on YouTube, because what happens is there's a million other videos that come up, and before you know it, your kids are clicking through XYZ, and it's still that constant sense of motion and stimulation, where I like the idea of implementing the arts and maybe considering the importance of keeping it off of technology, like old-fashioned pen and paper and the coloring, those like de-stress coloring books, or kind of like what you were saying, just using whatever, maybe it's just creating percussion out of oatmeal cans, depending on the age of your child. Maybe a 17-year-old wouldn't want to do that, but like something that is off of technology, that is tapping into rhythm, it's tapping into music, it's tapping into art as expression, not as entertainment or performance.
We've actually done this with teens, 14 to 18, making bucket drums. Go get paint buckets from Home Depot or Lowe's. And then we would decorate them, the outside of it. And then we would do drumming on, I would bring kitchen spoons, like wooden kitchen spoons as a drum. And so, all ages, that's part of my job, convincing all ages that this is within us, But no,
okay. So quick question. How are you convincing those ages?
Right?
What are you saying to them to be like, you need to understand this will actually help you?
You've spent the last 2 years being expected to be an adult, being expected to just go with the flow, to stay grounded in a time when absolutely nothing is consistent around you. Everything is always changing. It is always changing without your permission. It is always changing without your control.
Yeah.
Give yourself this time for the next 30 minutes to be a kid. Everybody wants 30 minutes to be a kid. I don't care if you're a kid, a young adult, an older adult, a senior. My seniors, I'm going to go see in a few minutes here, up to 100 years old. We all want to connect with that feeling that has been taken from you over the last few years. You have been expected to age very quickly. You've missed a lot of milestones through this last time. Let me give you this back to just be joyful for the next 30 minutes. And at the end of that, I'll say, did anybody worry about like what time your work shift starts later? Or, that friend that you haven't texted back yet that you have a concern with, or that fight you had with your mom? Did anyone think about that last 30 minutes? No, it was such a break. It was just such a break from that. So just put it in terms, no matter who you're talking to, what age you're talking to, what is something that's going to be valuable to them? And odds are having a break from reality right now is going to be valuable to most people.
Yeah, I love that, Bree. There's so many amazing takeaways from this episode. I cannot wait to share it with everyone. I've certainly taken things away as well. I actually have 2 oatmeal cans right now that I'm going to save.
That's
We're going to make drums. We're going to make drums. Where can people connect with you moving forward if they want to follow you or learn more from you? Where would you send them?
Absolutely. Yes. So I mentioned I work with Creative Arts Therapies at the Palm Beaches. If you have something specific to music therapy or art therapy you want to ask me, you can definitely follow at Creative Arts Therapies PB is our Instagram page for that. But I'm so excited. I know we're going to get scheduling soon here, Anna, for you to come on my podcast, The Mindful Mentor, that can be found anywhere you listen to your podcast. So I so appreciate the opportunity to be here and really look forward to having a conversation with you there as well. You can also follow me on Instagram at Mindful Mentor Bree. And again, I just really appreciate this opportunity.
Oh, thanks, Bree. I just pray God's richest blessing over your work, over your home, and your sweet little baby.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Take care.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Imperfectly Empowered podcast. It is my honor to be here with you. I am so grateful for each and every one of you. If you are watching on YouTube, be sure to click the subscribe button below so you don't miss a show, and leave a comment with your thoughts from today's episode below. If you are listening via your preferred podcasting platform, would you help keep us on the air by rating our show and leaving an honest review of your thoughts from today? In case you haven't heard it lately, your story matters and you are loved. This is your host, Anna Fulmer, and I will see you here next time on the Imperfectly Empowered podcast.